Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I bring you the last house on Ember Creek Road. The gravel driveway felt longer than usual that Friday evening as Myra watched her parents' taillights disappear around the bend, swallowed by the thick Virginia pines. She was 17, old enough to stay alone, her mother had said. Pressing a list of emergency numbers in her hands like a talisman. A weekend alone, while they attended her aunt's wedding in Roanoke, Mara had actually looked forward to it. 2 days of bad TV, cereal for dinner, and nobody telling her to turn down the music. She stood on the porch a moment longer than necessary, listening to the silence settle around the property. Their house sat at the end of Ember Creek Road, the last structure before the tree line swallowed everything. The nearest neighbor, the old Mr. Halson, was a quarter-mile back through the woods. His porch light was a small yellow star through the branches. "Just us, Bear," she said. The dog, a large honey-colored golden retriever with a gray dusty muzzle, pressed his warm flank against her leg and looked up at her with a calm, ancient patience that only old dogs possess. He was 11 years old, slow on cold mornings, and completely devoted to Mara. She had picked him from the litter when she was 6. He had slept in her room every night since. She scratched behind his ears and went inside. The first thing she did was make popcorn. The second thing she did was to turn every light on the ground floor on. She wasn't afraid, she told herself. She just preferred it bright. She had just settled onto the couch with Bear's heavy head on her lap when a local news cut to a breaking segment. Myra almost changed the channel. She had no interest in local news, which usually meant school board arguments or farm reports. But something about the anchor's posture made her pause. The woman sat too straight, her face arranged with a careful blankness that people use when the news was genuinely bad. Authorities are urging residents in Wythe and Carroll County to take precautions tonight after confirming that a man suspected in a string of killings across the region had moved into the area. The suspect, known to investigators as an individual responsible for at least 4 deaths across southwest Virginia and western North Carolina over the past 8 months. It is described as a white male between 30 and 45 years of age and over 6 feet tall. Myra turned up the volume. Investigators have noted the suspect's pattern for targeting isolated rural properties. Carroll County Sheriff Donna Pruitt held a brief press conference this afternoon. The footage cut to a woman in a uniform standing at a cluster of microphones outside what Myra recognized as the county courthouse in Hillsville. "We are asking residents, particularly those in the rural isolated ones, to secure their home tonight. Lock your doors and windows. Do not open your door to strangers. And if you see anything suspicious, call 911 immediately. Do not approach. Do not engage." The anchor returned. "The suspect is considered extremely dangerous." She muted the TV. For a long moment, she sat at the butter yellow light of the living room, the popcorn growing cold in the bowl. Bear's slow breathing warmed against her leg. Then she stood up. She locked the front door, deadbolt and chain. She locked the back door. She went from window to window on the ground floor, checking each latch, testing each lock. Her reflection, ghosting along with her in the dark glass. She climbed to the second floor and checked the windows too. Her parents' bedroom, the hallway window, the bathroom, locked. Her own bedroom, locked. She was methodical about it, the way her father had taught her. If you're going to do something, do it properly, he used to say. Then she remembered the basement. She stood at the top of the basement stairs and looked down into the dark. There were 3 windows down there, 2 on the north wall and 1 on the east. All of them at the ground level. All of them that had a particular style of old window that had never fit their frames quite right. She had heard her father complain about them every fall. One of these days I'll replace them. Yes, one of these days. She descended the stairs, found the pull-string light, and tugged at the basement. Looked back in the dim bulbs light her father's workbench. Shelved units loaded full of paint cans and storage boxes. Her old bike hanging from hooks in the rafters. The furnace hunched in the corner like a sleeping giant. The 2 north windows locked just fine. Old latches, stiff but functional. She pressed them until she felt them seat. The east window was another matter. The latch turned, but the mechanism didn't catch. She could feel it, a vague, inadequate resistance, like a door that felt closed, but isn't. She tried 3 times. She found a screwdriver on her father's workbench, tried to force the latch into a better position. It gave her nothing. The latch was simply broken. It had probably been broken for months, and nobody had got around to fixing it. She stood back and looked at the window from outside. It would be knees high for an adult to easy reach, easy to push inward if someone applied pressure at the right spot. Her skin pricked. She looked around the basement for something to brace it with. She considered a paint can. On the steel, the window opened inward, the paint would simply tip and fall. She tried wedging the screwdriver in the latch. The fit was wrong. She spent 10 minutes on it, growing increasingly frustrated. Her breath coming a little faster than she wanted to admit. Finally, she made a decision. She wouldn't fix what was already broken. She left the east window as it was. She climbed back upstairs, locked the basement door. A solid interior door, she noted. A proper keyed lock. When she turned, she dropped the key into her sweatshirt pocket where she could feel it against her hip. Then she stood in the kitchen for a moment, phone in hand, generally considered calling her parents. She didn't. It was probably nothing. It was probably just media panic about something that was 40 miles away. She would feel ridiculous. She would ruin their weekend over a broken latch and a scary news segment. She put the phone in her pocket and went to bed. She left the hallway light on. Barry arranged himself in his customary place, circling twice before settling under the bed frame with a long exhalation. A sound like the day letting itself go. She lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house. Houses have voices. She'd grown up knowing this one. The groan of the third stair, the tick, tick, tick of the heating pipes when the furnace kicked on. The way the wind in the north side made the eve whistle in a particular key that was almost musical. She knew all of it. She had cataloged it without knowing she was cataloging it over 17 years of nights in this room. So when she finally slept, she was listening even in her sleep. The first time she woke, she didn't know what had woken her. The surface from a dream, something dissolving, faces she couldn't hold on to. And lay still in the dark, heart beating a particular alertness her body reserves for nighttime waking. The hallway light made a thin bar under the door. Drip. She turned her head toward the bathroom. The hall bath directly across her bedroom. The faucet in there had been slightly loose for weeks. Drip, drip. She looked at her phone. 1:47 a.m. She considered getting up, considered the cold floor and the effort of weight of sleep still pulling at her Instead of rolling toward the edge of the bed and reaching her hand down, Barry was there, as he always. She felt his warm, familiar presence of his tongue against her knuckles. That general instinctive reassurance that he'd offered her since she was a little girl reaching down. Exactly this way, she exhaled. Just the faucet. Just the faucet that's been dripping for weeks. She pulled her hand back, tucked it under her cheek, and slept. The second time she woke, 3:12 a.m. The dripping again, steadier now, she thought. Maybe she was just more attuned to it. She surfaced slowly, the way you do in the middle of a dream sleep. Her thoughts were slow and soft and imprecise. She reached her hand down without fully thinking about it. Reflex, habit, 11 years of habit. The lick came, warm and gentle. There, she thought, already sinking back to sleep. Good boy, she slept. The third time was 4:33 a.m. The dripping had changed. She couldn't say how she knew this, only that the sound crossed more threshold from background noise into something that required attention. It was heavier, more regular, like something that with weight and rhythm behind it. She lay still and listened, felt something she couldn't name shift inside her chest. She reached her hand down again. The lick came immediate, warm, but she didn't pull her hand back. She laid there in the dark, thinking about the sound, thinking about the news anchor's careful face, the sheriff's flat, deliberate voice, the isolated rural properties. She thought about the east window that wouldn't lock. She thought about the basement door she had locked and the key now sitting in her pocket of her sweatshirt, which hung on the back of the chair across the room. Drip, drip, drip. She sat up. She moved through the room with the cautious monotony of someone that doesn't want to make a sound. She retrieved her phone on the nightstand. 4:33. The screen confirmed. Its blue white light cold against her face. She considered dialing 911. She considered how she would explain this dripping faucet and the feeling. She crossed her bedroom door and opened it slowly, the way she opened it 1,000 times late at night, sneaking into the kitchen for water or soda. That occasional cookie. The hallway light was still on. The hall bath door was slightly ajar, which was how she always left it. Drip, drip, drip. She pushed the bathroom door open with her fingertips. She reached in and found the light switch without entering the room. She turned on the light, and then she saw it. Later, she would struggle to reconstruct the sequence of what happened in the next 3 seconds. Trauma works that way. It splinters time, corrupts the chronology, leaving you with images rather than narratives. Bear was hanging there from a curved shower rod by the length of her father's orange extension cord, knotted under his forelegs, limp and still. His throat had been cut. The blood had run down his legs and fallen from his paws into a below a rhythm that a white tub had collected and amplified. Drip, drip, drip. The shower curtain pressed slightly inward, then inward with the draft of the window. The mirror was her father's shaving mirror, mounted on the wall, left to the sink. She looked at it because there was something on it. Because even in extremity, the human eye follows what is written. She reads the words on the mirror, written in red. She didn't read them twice. She didn't need to. She ran. Not down the stairs, not toward the basement door or the broken window or whatever else might be between her and the outside. She ran back to her room, closed and locked the door. thinking some past version of herself that had once asked her parents to install a lock for privacy and stood her back against it in the dark. Her phone was in her hand. She dialed 911. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. Mara heard her own voice, oddly calm, oddly precise. This is the address. This is what I found. I think there's someone in my house. I don't know where they are now. And the dispatcher's voice was firm, steady, counter rhythm. Stay on the line. Help is coming. Stay in the room. Do not open the door. She slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor with her knees drawn up, phone at her ear as she waited. Thought about Bear's warm tongue against her hand 3 times, patient, gentle, and unchanged. She understood now what she had been touching. The thought arrived the way worst thoughts do, not with drama, but with quite terrible certainty. She pressed herself harder against the door and listened to the dispatcher's voice, watching the thin gold line of light under the door. Did not let herself think about what was on the other side of it. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office arrived 11 minutes later. They found the east basement window open. They found Bear. They found the mirror. They found in a crawl space above the hallway access to a hatch in the ceiling she had never thought about, had never in 17 years had the cause to think about. A man folded into the dark between the insulation bats, still silent, who had been there a long time, that the dust had settled back down around him. He had been in the house before she locked the basement door. He had been there when she was checking the windows. He had been there when she made popcorn and watched the news. He had been there for all 3 wakings, for all 3 times she reached her hand toward the floor. That's the part she lives with now, in the years after. Not the mirror, not her dog, not the 11 minutes. The part she lived with. 3 times in the dark she reached down for comfort, and 3 times something had answered her, and only one of those things had been her dog.